FERPA Training for School Employees, Night Training Seminar. What is Family Education Rights and Privacy Act? FERPA. FERPA is a federal law that protects the confidentiality of student information. It protects personally identifiable information from students' education records from disclosure without written consent from the parent or eligible student. A student who is age of 18 years of age or who is attending a post-secondary institution. FERPA, commonly known as the Buckley Amendment, is one of the oldest privacy laws on the books, implemented in 1974. FERPA applies to schools that receive federal funds through a program of the U.S. Department of Education. Rights of FERPA. FERPA gives parents and eligible students the right to prevent the disclosure of PII from their education records without consent, access to review and inspect student education records, request correction of these education records. The law also gives the right to opt out of military recruitment and opt out of disclosure of students' directory information. FERPA prevents disclosure of information from a student's education record but doesn't prevent disclosure of directory information. Some examples of education records: student grades, immunization and health records maintained by the school, disciplinary records, student progress reports, academic or physical testing results, grade point average, and attendance records. Some common examples of directory information include student's name, address, telephone number, date of birth, major field of study, participation in officially recognized activities in sports, weight and height of athletic team members, dates of attendance, place of birth, and the grade level of a student. Surveillance cameras. As surveillance cameras become more ubiquitous in schools, savvy administrators need to be aware of not only the rapidly evolving technology, but also the evolving legal landscape. While surveillance cameras have become one of the cornerstones of school safety and security plans, they also raise legal issues that can leave administrators in a quandary. The Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution states that it prohibits entities such as public schools from conducting unreasonable searches. Courts that have considered whether surveillance recordings violate the Fourth Amendment have scrutinized the scope and manner of the recording. The Federal Electronic Communications Privacy of 1986 prohibits the intentional interception of any oral communication except where one part of the conversation has consented to the recording. Districts considering audio surveillance may attempt to mitigate risk by posting conspicuous signage to notify individuals that the conversations may be recorded and that consent to such recording is implied. Images of students captured on surveillance recordings qualify as education records when photo or video is directly related to a student and maintained by the educational institution. A recording will not be considered directly related to a student when a student's image is simply incidental to the activity depicted in the recording, or when a student is shown participating in school activities open to the public and the recording does not focus on any specific student. Some considerations. The advancement of technology has led to the importance of school security. School administrators should consider taking precautions which include developing and publishing purposes of cameras, installing cameras in areas of low expectation of privacy, notifying school community through policies, handbooks, websites, newsletters, and conspicuous signage, consulting with legal counsel prior to enabling audio recording, establishing protocol for maintaining recordings, consulting the Family Policy Compliance Office's 2008 facts when evaluating requests for access. Here is a website as shown, and developing protocols governing requests for copies. Some possible confusions which deal with FERPA. In the event of an epidemic outbreak or a campus shooting, a school can legally share students' education records with designated personnel and law enforcement officers. Again, this is just an example. DeVos says, FERPA is an area where widespread confusion remains, and this clarification will give local school leaders and law enforcement the tools they need to protect student privacy while ensuring the health and safety of students and others in the school community. I'm hoping that this presentation can help you decrease the amount of confusion that you have with FERPA. What is a law enforcement unit? Under FERPA, it means any individual, office, department, division, or other component of a school or district, such as a unit of police officers or security guards that is officially authorized or designated by the school or district to enforce any local, state, or federal law, or refer to appropriate authorities of matter for enforcement of any local, state, or federal law against any individual or organization other than the agency or institution itself. Maintain the physical security and safety of the agency or institution. Unintentional FERPA. This may happen quite several times. First thing to remember is be careful of vendors. Schools are responsible for what their vendors do with data. This can also include online vendors. Know when to release and withhold records. Information can be given to parents, children that are 18 years or older, or entering a post-secondary institution. Higher education institutions can choose to release a student's education records to both parents, provided that at least one parent claims that students as a dependent for tax purposes. Number 3. Be cautious about what you tell to whom. The teacher who saw an incident in person can speak about it because FERPA is not a confidentiality law. An inappropriate disclosure to just one person and an inappropriate disclosure to thousands of people on social media are both FERPA violations. Reading about a certain incident on a piece of paper and talking about it to others is a violation of FERPA. Avoid sharing sensitive information online through emails. Technology can sometimes be unreliable and information can be stolen. Here are 8 ways to ensure our school is FERPA compliant. First thing is raise FERPA awareness. Make sure everybody's aware and educated about what FERPA is and what we should be informed about. Number 2, confirm that FERPA applies to you. Again, we have to think about the situations in our classrooms that deal with FERPA. Number 3, know the rights, protections, and exceptions. Number 4, choose compliant vendors. Again, it's best to think about vendors and different type of online vendors that may be safe to use. Number 5, train all school employees. Again, everybody should know about FERPA and what its rules are. Number 6, implement compliant policies and procedures. Number 7, encrypt files and emails. Again, these are very important so that information cannot be stolen. And number 8, implement other prevention tools. So what is the role of a school resource officer? When dealing with undocumented students, we should know about the school resource officer's roles. The first role is, generally, SROs are not required to report undocumented students. They have no role in the removal of undocumented students. Number 2, access to student records should only be allowed if the requesting agency has a valid court order or subpoena in compliance with FERPA or immigration laws or regulations. And number 3, if ICE shows up at the school office and seeks access to student records or the student themselves, the school administration should ask ICE personnel to identify the legal basis of the request. Again, it's important for school administrators to know what school resource officers' roles are. Technology, helpful or dangerous? Digital records. Digital record keeping has replaced traditional paper files. Classroom assignments and assessments are often delivered online via laptops or tablets. Teachers use social media platforms, websites, and free apps in class, and many operational functions historically performed by schools are now outsourced remotely to contractors. FERPA was altered twice since it was first passed in the 1970s, creating exceptions to share information in students' records with vendors without parents' consent. Daniel Green advises that school leaders ensure that third-party vendors have appropriate safeguards in place and make sure contracts hold them liable if something does go wrong. Again, technology can be very risky. What to do when rights are violated? If parents or eligible students believe that their rights are under FERPA have been violated, they may file a formal complaint with the department. The secretary must take appropriate actions to enforce FERPA and to investigate violations. Formal investigations may involve numerous written communications and responses between the department and the parties to the complaint. Final determination for these investigations can sometimes take months or even years to complete. FERPA should operate effectively and efficiently to enable the resolution of complaints as quickly as possible. Data destruction. Here we have a short data life cycle, which include capturing the data, organizing it, utilizing it, managing it, and lastly, destroying the information. For very low-risk information, this may mean simply deleting electronic files or using a desk shredder for paper documents. Minimizing the amount of data you retain by destroying them when no longer needed is a key element of the Fair Information Practice principles, and is widely considered to be at best practice for protecting individuals' privacy and for lessening the potential impact of a data breach or inadvertent disclosure. Again, we want to make sure that information is not spread out to other people, and the best thing to do is, if information is not needed, to shred it or find a way to delete that information. How does FERPA impact your classroom? Be careful with technology used in your lessons. Don't use websites that require personal information. Again, we need to think about the safety of our students. Keep any student data you have secure. Keep physical copies in a safe place. Make sure gradebooks are closed if they're online and you leave the classroom. Exit out of accounts as soon as possible when not used. And number 3, responding access to requests. You may communicate education record information with students' parents. Again, it's important that students who are under the age of 18 must have consent from parents in order to receive this information. Finally, here are some tips for parents and adult-age students. Read everything that is sent from homes, from school, or in the mail. Always question why information about the student is being requested. Find out how your school defines directory information. Request the opt-out form if needed. Ask for a copy of school or district policies. Keep in mind your child may participate in programs not formally sponsored by the school, but associated with, such as sports teams. Review your child's education records periodically, and if there is a breach in confidentiality or privacy abuse, document it and file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Education. Again, it's good to be educated about FERPA, and we need to continue to learn about new things that the laws have slowly changed, or if anything is improved with the FERPA laws. Here are my references, and thank you for listening.